Oh, as it, we're live. It's the Website One meeting. I am having trouble with my broadband at the moment. It seems to be very stable for like an hour, and then it like cuts out for a minute. So if I just disappear, you'll know why. I should be able to come back on if I'm cut off. But yeah, let's have a quick coordination meeting. It's the 3rd of January. It's after the New Year period, and here we are. I guess I might. Yeah, let's do that thing that I do where I grab a piece of, it's not really paper, is it? It's like digital stuff. Let's grab digital stuff and just write down some of the things. I don't know, I find it very confusing. If I just sort of start talking, I like can't, you know, I lose myself.
Okay. I think that we're hitting that broadband issue. That was a very good timing, though. I lose myself, he said.
And he did.
And promptly did so. So, let's see.
So when you say it's like 0 to 10, is that, what's that in centigrade?
Let me do a quick calculation here. So 0 Fahrenheit is -17.778 centigrade.
All right, so you're down into the -10 then.
Very cold.
Yeah, almost -20. Yeah.
That's pretty cold.
Yeah, it's really, yeah, it's quite difficult. I thought in England you used both still. It's really just
old school people do, yeah. if you're over 70, then yeah, you're probably in Fahrenheit.
Oh, I see.
Well, when I was a young man on the weather forecast, they used to say both. I think that they stopped saying Fahrenheit now. It's this European influence, and that's how Brexit was basically about. That people really, feel we're being overrun with this metric stuff.
And there was me thinking it was because the EU tried to straighten all the bananas.
There's all sorts of opinions out there. I see very.
All right,
go on, Ben.
I'd never heard that about the EU, but I believe it.
Well, it's like, I think if you say it enough, then it's like, woohoo, it becomes true. That's what we're learning recently. Anyway, yes. So sorry, I cut out there. Actually, not due to my broadband provider. Chrome quit unexpectedly, randomly, bang, and I had to jump back in again. Federico is here. Let's get back to that task which I was just talking about doing, which is like the thing where I, write out stuff, things that are going on. I've done a little bit on Website One this week, which includes merging Bill's pull request, various Dependabot things, which is, I guess, we're continuing to stay up to date with the keep the gems up to date. I also updated like the text of the email that goes out to tell people about the new mobs that are going on and things like that. So, I guess that's sort of, it's like little station keeping. The more significant thing that I'm trying to work on is an update to the premium domain model. That's kind of like in progress. Before Christmas, I kind of spent a week going through all of the data that we have on the premium memberships and subscriptions and so on, and trying to check to make sure that it's like up to date and correct. And it was clear that we need to like be able to represent how subscriptions change over time, and that requires a change in the domain model. So that's kind of the main chunk that I'm working on. What I really want to get onto is working on supporting private events, so that people who are running mobs can just sort of start. They can put the URL for the Hangout and the link into the the way that they do for public events, and they'll be sent to the right channels, and they'll be archived in the site, and all the premium members will have access to them through the site and things like that. And people who are kind of like, oh, look, there's a React mob going on, will then be able to sort of see that, and then maybe like they get free access to one video, but then if they want to see another one, then they get directed to say, oh yes, now if you'd like to sign up for premium mob kind of thing. But I'm not sure when I'm going to get to that. So that's sort of where I am. Other things, I continue to worry about performance, and there are things like the getting started pages still not really helping people get started as well as they should be. What was the other thing? Oh yes, just that we had these landing page experiments that we were going to do and have been put off. So that's some of the things on my mind. Let's start with Bill. You were in first. You don't have to have any. Did you have any thoughts related to Website One, or you're looking for a ticket or any questions?
I was looking at that that previous ticket with was it your authentication when upgrading the Google Auth gem?
Yeah.
I've got stuck on that. I mean, I was looking at what you're talking about, but I couldn't see how you could use that to test because it mocks everything out. I couldn't see how you could use it to test the API to specifically catch the error that occurred.
Right. Sure. Well, we can certainly talk.
An impasse.
Yeah, we can maybe talk more about that. I mean, it may just be that we can't catch that particular kind of error, but yes. So we can certainly talk more about that. Ben, is there anything on your mind in particular?
I think that I think I need to sort of get back up to speed. I think maybe there was a ticket associated with me, but I can't. I mean, I haven't looked at it in a while. I just thought, well, I'll join the meeting.
Yeah, no worries at all. Yeah, and yeah, I think we merged in that pull request from yours from before, and I think that will have got its way out to production. And yeah, we could just have a quick look at the old Waffly board, and yeah, I can't. We've got this one here. We're talking about several hours after an event goes live. It still shows as live, even though long over. So there was a ticket, that we talked about you working on, but of course you're free to like discard it and think about other things. But yeah, that was the one we.
No, that's an interesting problem. I'm just yeah, all right. Because there are two different places where we needed to worry about that, right? There was the JavaScript one, and then there was the one that was just created using the server-side code that didn't get updated continuous.
Exactly. We've got the two places, and probably the thing to do is to split it into two things and fix the one that's already in JavaScript. It's probably easier to make that so that it turns itself, it says that the event is over after the allotted time.
Right.
And having got that working, then it's probably easier to then subsequently work on the main thing on the homepage, which we're maybe going to turn off for performance tests anyway. But there you go.
And we discussed the idea that the meetings don't always go as long, or they go longer than the original allotted time, or and I guess there was the idea that it wasn't a problem. We didn't think it was a problem to talk about how to report it not being live, and if it was still live, because if we actually made it go longer, it would encourage people to join near the end anyway, and that we don't necessarily want to do that.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, cool. So yeah, take your time, warm yourself back up, and you can get into that one, and I'd love to help you out with it. So that this is not showing events live forever when user does not refresh browser.
No, it's not really forever. It's just until the next event becomes the one that's displayed, right?
Well, I think if the user doesn't refresh their browser, it effectively shows that it will never change. Right?
I see.
Event live, and it just goes on and on forever. If they refresh the browser, if the person's sitting there hitting the refresh button, it's never actually a problem. But of course, people don't do that. So,
right.
Yeah. It's the kind of top left pop up thing that we're talking about there. And yeah, happily direct you to the code on that. Federico is also here. Hey, Federico, how are things going with you? Federico is muted, either by intent or accident, and he continues to be muted. So yes, so I guess yeah. Well, so one of the things we can also do in a meeting such as this is vote on more tickets to have things worked on. But I think everybody's got a thing. It feels like the main issue for us, or the main block, if everyone is for Bill. Yeah, so this is the problem's been fixed, but we're looking to try and sort the tests to see if they could catch the error. I think you're basically right, Bill, in that the Cucumber tests, they mock OAuth, and to the extent that the problem that we encountered with Google was, something completely specific to the Google API. So Google API changes, then because when OAuth is mocked, it's not going to touch the Google API. Then there's no way that this sort of change could be detected.
Yeah, I mean, the tests, from what I can see, it's basically test the controller and whether we've got the templates there. They don't touch the API at all. So if you upgrade the gem or downgrade it, or API changes, we're not going to pick that up.
Well, I think that's.
I think.
Well, I think what we've got with this, there's different places that you can mock the code. So. Yeah. As we know, with things like VCR and Puffing Billy, right, we can effectively it's a mock at the network level. So we can, when we wrap our testing framework in something that records the network interactions, we can play back those network interactions and check that things still work, within this sort of sandbox that's like the edge of which is the network traffic going in and out. Now, even with this, if something changes on what Google's provided, if I put on the other side of this, it's like if this is like the interior of our code, like we might have the test driving the application code, and then you've got the gem library that the application code is talking to. And then the library talks out to the network. So VCR Puffing Billy sticks in this level. I think you probably know all this already. Oh, that's Federico lost his connection, unfortunately. But it's back in now. Hey, Federico. And so here we've got the actual Google API that's working with Google Auth. So it's behind there. Now there's different places we can mock our authentication. We can mock our application code. Right, and so what that means is if the application code has got a bit of like a method that might say something like, it might like that we've got a method on what's it called? Oh gosh, a method on one of the controllers which happens to be like authenticate, and then we ensure that always returns true, like that it just works. Then clearly this kind of test is only going to test that our bit of application code. And do nothing else. Little lines in here, it's sensible. Anyway, now the thing is with the mocking the gem library, which is this next, like the one that OAuth is actually providing, is that I'm still, I think, like yourself, not optimistic that it will detect the error that we encountered, but I'm not sure if the problem that was caused is a problem with the Google API or with the gem library itself. Do you know what I mean, Bill?
You just mean it was just because it was upgraded?
Well, see, what we've got is we've got these two gems, right? I think we're using the G+ one, right?
Yeah.
And I think Odin Project's using the Google one. And these gems themselves rely upon like another gem. So we've got the gem library, and then we've got underneath that we've got, we can use either one of these two gems, and then we've got after that there's like OAuth. And I think what we worked out was that the process of taking this from, I don't know what it was, 1.7 to I think it was from 1 to 2, whatever this was, basically caused the system not to work when we were using the OAuth G+ gem, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. And so, I mean, what's not clear to me is, I presume that the failure was, there's some difference between the way that OAuth 1. whatever talks to the Google API, and version 2, but it might have been an inconsistency in between OAuth 2 and OAuth G+. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, you could swap out the OAuth G+ just for OAuth Google.
Indeed, that would certainly be an interesting thing to try. But do you see what I'm saying? Like if like this mocking thing is, we could be mocking here at this level or here at this level, and I think like the OAuth mocking stuff is actually specific to this level. So if the problem that we were encountering was related to the way OAuth G+ works with OAuth 2.0, then in principle, mocking at this level could catch the issue. Do you see what I'm saying?
I understand that. Actually,
go on.
I mean, the OAuth documentation just has a general, just says this explains how to set up integration tests. It doesn't explain anything about, mocking at different levels.
No, but it's because it's specific to the OAuth gem and not the OAuth G+ gem.
Yeah.
Then I think it's effectively mocking at this level rather than this level.
All right.
I'm not optimistic that we will be able to detect. I would say there's a relatively small chance that by adding a few more tests that we can expose the particular kind of error that we encountered. I mean, it seems to me probably there's an issue, I guess, in the OAuth G+, and I mean, probably in some ways what we should be doing is looking for, if we go for OAuth G+, I mean, it's maybe that, because I think this is one that we're using, OAuth G+ on GitHub. I guess that's the one we're using. But so like it maybe that this one, which hasn't been updated in a while, has someone else even reported the issue? Probably. Let's have a look there. No, not necessarily. But it's potentially a bug in one of these, in the library that we happen to be using. I mean, go on.
I was going to say, when you set it up, because I mean, I was looking yesterday at how you set it up from scratch.
Yes.
And on the Google side, on the Google server, when you set up the API, you set up a contacts API and a G+ API. And then on the other end, on your end, you can either use the G+ gem or you can use the Google Auth gem. As far as I can see, you could probably swap them out without issue, possibly.
Yes, although I don't know that we have any evidence that one is better than the other. We know that the Odin project uses the other one, but we don't know, is the Odin project using 2.0 underneath, or just did they stick with 1. whatever?
I don't remember, but it's easy to check.
Right.
What I do know is that they don't test it.
Indeed. Sure.
They haven't bothered.
No, they haven't. Well, and we could say that that's. I mean, you could say if Odin project are not doing it, then we shouldn't do it. I mean, if that's the case, then maybe what we should be doing is removing the tests that make it seem like we do have test coverage. But so it's entirely up to you that the angle that you take. I think that what I would have, like, the approach that I would be taking, which I was trying to describe the other day, is worrying less about whether one thing or another will make a difference. Although I think having this model of the different layers and so on is helpful. What I was trying to say was what we don't have, what we very much don't have, is we don't have any sad path tests in here, right?
I've added 2.
Oh, you have? Oh, right. I had no idea that you'd done any coding at all.
Yeah.
Oh, you've done some coding. Oh, that's fantastic. Yes. Oh,
I added 2. One for Google and one for GitHub, where you basically just following what you were talking about. Was it yesterday or the day before?
Oh, yeah. Oh, wonderful. Yeah. Go on.
We use the credentials symbol, and it automatically generates an error. And the Google one I've actually got working.
Okay.
The GitHub one, on the other hand, for some reason it can't find the button on the screen. In the previous scenarios it can. I don't know why it just suddenly throws an error.
Yes. Right. Okay. So I guess I'd back up there and I'd say, do you want to put in a work in progress pull request so that we can all look at the code?
Yeah. Okay. How do I? What do I do to do that?
Ah, okay. So, well, you've made some changes in your code locally? Have you been doing that in a branch or just on the develop branch?
No, I've made a separate branch. So I took it back to the previous. I can't remember what you call that now. I took it back to was it 552 something or other? What do you call that?
Commit.
Commit. Thank you. Yes, that's what I was thinking of.
You took it back to the commit where it had the new version of like the OmniAuth 2.
Yes, I took it back to the commit where the error first occurred.
And you
branch from there.
Right.
I've added a couple of and added an extra hook, added a couple of scenarios. Following what you were saying.
Wonderful.
Because I understood what you said.
Yeah, great.
So now I've got a branch. I just don't know what to do with the branch now.
Yes. Well, so you've got a couple of options. One of which is that you could push that to your. So if I go here, like presumably you have a fork, which would be like something like this. Yeah. So that's probably the easiest way to go. Is then if you're in that branch on your let me see if I can find it. There's a website one. Let's say that you were on that branch. Oh gosh. So here, if I get, oh, if only I could type, and my computer would like.
I can push it up to that.
Yeah, so push it up to your branch.
Merge.
Yeah.
Leave it as a separate branch there.
Well, as long as the branch has got a name, I wouldn't merge it into anything.
Okay then.
Yeah, I would, assuming that you were in some. It slows down. I have to get a new computer. But so yeah, assuming that you're in a branch, you could then do here git push origin, and then you've got like an issue number, and then whatever, and that will push it up to your fork.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Okay.
And then you can open a pull request, and you can put WIP in the title, and then we could be having the discussion around the specific code. Yeah. Federico was unfortunately lost the connection, had audio problems, is now back in. Sorry, Federico, we're just sort of not sure when you come back in, and just wanted to see that through to unblock Bill. How are things going with you, Federico? Did you have any thoughts for the meeting?
Actually, no. First of all, can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't have any issues. I'm just here for moral support.
Much appreciated. Fantastic.
So just going back to what you were talking about before briefly, that's what you call a work in progress commit pull request?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And so if we have a look at over here, we've got various pull requests going on. And so Aaron Chop is another premium member, actually. He also started work on this, actually. I think is a work in progress thing. I should probably flag that as such. So, I mean, Aaron's quite new, and I'm also, he was actually asking about, what's the sequence of things that I need to do. By the way, I think the SHF project has got a great step-by-step thing that we could probably learn from.
Sorry, the what project?
The SHF project, which stands for something. It's a Swedish. What is it called? It's a Swedish animal charity, dog charity, in fact. And following, I think, what seems to be an Agile Ventures thing is we give projects names where it's almost impossible to infer what they're about from the title. But
this encourages discussion.
Indeed, I think it's not necessarily intentional. It just sort of seems to happen. So it's the Sveriges Hundföretagareförening, the Swedish Dog Industry Association.
I was going to guess, yeah.
Yeah. And they've got a good flow going, and they have they've really, they focus on getting their wiki, and so they've got, for example, here like developing a feature and like a step-by-step of what to do. We've got something a little similar, but I think it's sort of in our contributing.md and could maybe use some. The thing I was pointing, I mean, we've got this general steps about getting to work, voting, and so on, and then it's sort of like talks through the different things about the pull request and so on. But yeah, theirs looks much cleaner and neater than ours.
Would it be worthwhile to add that as a possible task?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, it certainly would.
Clean up the documentation.
Yeah, so I could go in here and I can add, I could say like, improve our step-by-step on how to submit SHF project. Has a great example here. Would be lovely to keep our thing in contributing. I guess, or at least we can link to it from contributing MD. I guess the thing that we've got at the moment is we've got a file that's sort of gradually expanded and has all the information in, but there's not kind of a clear. We've got a step by step there, but theirs is much more nicely formatted. So, yeah, let me.
So it's more of a formatting thing.
Well, the proof will be in the pudding. I mean, you know, you folks are in an important state in that you're new to the project, and so, you know, you can imagine what sorts of documentation and layout would have been helpful to make it easier for you to get started, and can help us with that. I mean, so for example, we've got, you know, this note here about, you know, work in progress pull request and so on, where we're trying to say, yes, it's like, you know, often I've had people say, oh, I don't want to put a pull request in because it might break something. And it's like, well, it can't. And I just love seeing your code. And it's so much easier to help you if I can see your code. So I'm kind of like, I think I wrote this originally. I'm trying to sort of encourage people to feel that they can just submit pull requests early and often. And it's not, things don't have to be polished and ready to be submitted as a pull request. It's just, you know, a way of communicating one's intermediate state. Our own docs are clustered around.
That's actually kind of useful for me to hear, because I'd never quite understood that was explicitly the case, but it makes sense.
Indeed, and I mean that's I think, you know, my New Year's resolution for 2018 is try and be a better communicator. I have bought this book which says communication techniques to make you unstoppable, called The Snowball Effect, which I don't know, it doesn't have any effect on me yet, but anyway, yeah, there are lots of things like that. That yes, I think if we could somehow what I don't know is whether this documentation here actually is proving particularly useful. I sort of look at it and I see there's a clear step 1, step 2, you know, like how to develop a new feature, and it feels like, yeah, like a really clear step by step, 1, 2, 3, and so on would be very helpful. You know, you can. I don't know. Maybe we would spend a lot of time updating the documentation, and people will still want to have it explained in face-to-face meetings like this one. But that's cool too.
I think that those step-by-steps are quite helpful. I mean, what do you think, Bill?
No, I would find them helpful. Yeah. Sorry, what document was that in? Was that?
Yeah. So I've put this ticket into the thing here, which I'll just share in Slack, so at least you can find it later. But so the SHF, I mean, that SHF project is another, it's another project within Agile Ventures, and they have their GitHub, and they're in on the Agile Ventures group, so to speak. A link there. So, and I've just created a ticket, and it links to an example of them, and it also links to the contributing.md document that we have within Website 1. And one difference is that they've gone with the wiki, where anybody could edit and nobody gets any notifications. And we did used to use the wiki. And when I took over the project, or took over as project manager, I tried to get us to move away from that and like have all our documentation actually versioned and in the main repo, for better or for worse. I don't know if that's actually the best way to do it, but this contributing.md file has a special status in GitHub, in that if you open a pull request in GitHub, so here, can I do a new pull request there? It will say, what if I'd have to like find a branch and just create a pull request first. I think then compare there. Really, and I first find two things. Okay, but I'd have to actually find a real pull request. Maybe if you're in the process of making one, Bill, you can share. But what it does, it pops up and it says a couple of things like, oh, if you're making a pull request, please check out our contributing documentation. And so this contributing.md file is linked to from the open a pull request thing. If that makes any sense?
So it's only special in that the link appears when you do that to that particular document. Was that set? How is that determined?
That's just one of the features of GitHub. They have certain files.
Okay.
Yeah, if we look at, there's certain privileged files in GitHub. Gotcha. So if we look at here,
it's a convention.
Yeah, it's a convention. So README, anything README is going to end up being displayed on the kind of homepage.
Yeah.
And then you've got these things like code of conduct and contributing.md are going to appear in certain places. Like if you open an issue, I think, can we go issues? Open an issue. I think it might, yeah. It says, before you open an issue, please review the contributing and conduct guidelines for this repository. And so these will link to our contribution.md and conduct.md files.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of handy. I think what I'd certainly see, like, our contributing.md file has become rather unwieldy. It's quite long, is what I'm saying. And actually, what we could certainly be doing is, make it like a high level. Okay, do you want to report an issue? Do this. Do you want to submit a new feature? Do this. And break out the sections into subdocuments, which would probably make it less intimidating and allow people to find where they want to go more easily. And they could be linked to. We've got the docs directory where this actually, all the stuff that we used to have in the wiki, I moved in here so that we could have it under version control. And if somebody wanted to make a change, they could do a pull request to make the change. But there we go. And you've got like installed.
Are all those documents linked from the main contributing document?
Some of them are. Probably more of them are linked from the README document, I think.
Okay.
But yes, all of the documentation could be improved and reorganized and so on and so forth. Yes. So, any other thoughts on anything that we've been talking about?
Not with me, no.
Good show. I guess the thing that I recall was that you were saying, Bill, of the code that you've done, you've got like one thing is happening the way that you expect, but another thing is not.
Yeah. So following the OmniAuth docs, when you use their failure path, it just basically tests your failure path in the controller, and so it should pop up with a message to the user saying, authentication failed or something.
Right.
For the Google bit, that works. But when I did it for GitHub, it didn't.
Okay.
Capybara doesn't see the button on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
When other scenarios click on the same button and see it perfectly.
Yes.
So I'm not quite sure what I missed there.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely something that I could potentially help you with. I think if we had it in as a work in progress pull request,
yeah,
maybe get to the bottom of that quite quickly. But I guess, yeah, I'll leave it that. Feel free to push that up at your leisure.
Yeah,
and we'll have a look at that. Yeah, and so yeah, no, that's fantastic. If you've managed to add a couple of sad path tests there, and check that we're doing the mocking as suggested, then that's a huge win. Have you tried also? I guess what you're seeing, because you branched off the place, so it's using OmniAuth 2, and it's not the tests are all passing. So hence your statement that even with these additional tests that you've added, these changes would still not expose the original problem that we had.
No, they wouldn't.
No, indeed. Yeah, interesting.
So I mean, the controller side all seems to work fine.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it's worth getting those sad path tests in there, just as a bit of, you know, to check that those code paths work, because, you know, or like maybe that they won't work with the GitHub. You maybe have exposed a problem there. Yeah, and then the other thing might be to like experiment with the OAuth Google, but that could almost be a separate operation, couldn't it? And I think going forward, you probably don't need to necessarily fork off that old commit. You could just, in a new branch, start by doing the upgrade and then move from there, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So you'd start with develop branch and not the old one.
Yeah, because we've got starts to be more and more piles of changes. We'll see when you get your pull request in if they're sufficient to make it difficult to merge in the sad path tests that you've added. I noticed that we've had from OmniAuth, it's like we've had like since we encountered that problem, which was as a result of upgrading OmniAuth, we've since had like a couple of different like pull requests from Dependabot about changes in other parts of this OmniAuth ecosystem that it's recommending that we have. I've very specifically not merged them based on the problems that we had previously. But yeah, so there's another set of things to explore and test there. But yeah, feel free to. I mean, this is kind of a bit of a what's the word? It's a bit of a rabbit hole. And so if eventually you're feeling like, I just don't want to deal with that, give me something like more straightforward, we can certainly find you a different ticket to work on.
No, that's fine. I'll upload this today, in the next 10 minutes or so.
Wonderful.
Can I ask just kind of a lurker question here?
Please do.
What is indeed the difference between Google Auth and or the G Plus and the Google OAuth stuff?
Well, that's a good question, to which I think we don't know the precise answer. In as much as we know that we are using the G Plus authentication, and that has not without occasional problems, but has that has worked, you know, over the years. We know that the Odin project. I find their GitHub. Yeah, it's not that one. They happen to be using a different one. When the problem occurred, I went and like I happened to, because I'm doing a separate mob following their curriculum, and when we had that problem, I went and checked in with their system, and it was still working. And I was like, oh, they're using the same thing as us. And I looked underneath, and then I think we found, yeah, so they're using this OmniAuth Google OAuth 2, which just happens to be another flavor of that. I mean, and this is, if we sort of look at, I mean, there's kind of, the danger with searching for these individual things is, like, in principle, I've searched and I found this, but is this specifically the gem that they have installed? Probably, but yeah, so we can see here, this one has at least been updated slightly more recently than the one that we were looking at. I still find that's on.
So if I'm right about what's going on is it broke with the Google one you were using, and then you're like, well, the Odin Projects one didn't. Aren't they using the same one? And you determined that they're actually using this G Plus one. So you thought, oh, well, we should do that too.
Yeah, other way around. But yes.
Other way.
Yeah,
but then in fact it created other problems that you hadn't predicted.
Well, actually, what we haven't swapped over to the one that they're using. I mean, what I can see now actually quite clearly is, I think the OmniAuth G Plus that we're using only has. I assume that this is the one that we're using. This only has 45 stars and hasn't been updated within the last 2 years. And it looks like this one. I mean, this has got this has got order of magnitude more stars, and it's been updated in the last few months. And so, what's actually, and this was Bill's fantastic insight, was what happened is that we'd recently. I think what you're saying, Bill, we'd upgraded not the G Plus, but the OmniAuth GitHub, and the dependency graph had caused the OmniAuth, at least one of the OmniAuth related libraries underneath, to also upgrade.
Yeah.
And it was the problem was it seems that this
dependency update, which I believe caused the issue.
Yeah, and so if we look at, for example, the gem spec on this OmniAuth G+, this is one that we continue to use. It has a dependency here on OmniAuth OAuth 2 1.1, but I think under the hood, the GitHub upgrade caused that to upgrade, and it seems like this OmniAuth G+ is not robust to more recent changes in the OmniAuth OAuth 2 gem as regards, checking into Google and so on. So probably if we want to, keep upgrading and stay with the latest code, we probably do need to switch away from this G+ one to this more popular Google OAuth 2. But the difficulty is that even if we do, I think it's still unlikely that any test that we would create would catch the same issue in the future.
No, exactly.
Okay.
Go on.
No, I understand now. That's so you're trying to devise a test that it would in fact catch that.
Yes, and I think what Bill's already determined is that even with a couple of additional tests, it hasn't captured the problem. And I was sort of hoping forlornly that maybe the problem was somewhere in the interaction between these gems and the way in which the OAuth was mocking, at least some part of this. When we do this mocking, where's it gone? Here, when we do this, Bill, like we are requesting from the OmniAuth gem that it mocks part of itself internally. And I guess I was optimistically hoping that rather than completely excluding any of the code paths within these specific OAuth libraries, that it would maybe exercise part of them and it might pick up on some problem about the way in which this library would integrate with this library. But it seems already from your test that it doesn't. Probably what it does is that when you mock OAuth to say, right, for this particular provider, do this thing, it then completely ignores any code.
Yeah, as far as I can see, when you use their mock, it just doesn't go online at all. I mean, I even tried.
No, it certainly doesn't. It certainly doesn't go online. There's no question about that.
Yeah, so it doesn't. Yeah, it just mocks out everything.
Well, I think that's not necessarily the case.
No?
I mean,
does it actually download some stuff that it exercises the code against, as if it were getting it from online somewhere?
No, I don't.
Not as far as I can see.
No,
it's not like a VCR sort of thing.
Like, so I'll say, Bill, in any of these cases, it doesn't go online.
Yeah.
But the question is, like, it could conceivably be allowing some of the code paths in these gems to be exercised before it got online, right? The problem is not the way that the Google API is responding per se, right? Because clearly the Google API works with some combinations of these things. I mean, the Google API is what it is, and we can't kind of test that so much. I think the problem that we have is that the OAuth G+, right, doesn't work. Like when it's running live with the more recent version of the OAuth, it just doesn't work. And if the mocking was actually at this level and it allowed some of the code paths in the G+ to operate, then in principle the problem would be exposed, even if it didn't hit the Google API. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a rather esoteric point, and what we've seen is that it doesn't. So that's fair enough.
But do you think there's a high degree of likelihood that this problem will reemerge? Is that why? Is it really worth trying to make sure that you're?
It's it's a kind of thing that we've been hit by before. No. I think we've probably already given it as much attention as it deserves. I mean, it's one of those things that it's part of our flow of users into the system. So the problem with this did affect one person who was signing up for Premium Mob, which is part of our revenue stream, and we very much don't want people to be experiencing that sort of negative state of affairs. So I think it was worth at least reviewing how we test to see if there was some way that it would pick it up. I think we've established that it doesn't, thanks to Bill's hard work. We've got a couple of other tests out of it that, you know, provide additional cover to the rest of our system. So I think it's worth adding those if we can. But it certainly seems like what we've discovered as well is that there are two different gems, and one of them is being more actively maintained than the other. So even if we can't get an acceptance test that's going to check for this kind of issue in the future, probably will be safer if we move from the relatively unmaintained gem to the, you know, the more robust one. Again, it's no guarantee, and you know, I don't think that, you know, one, we certainly shouldn't tie ourselves in knots trying to make sure this never happens again. I think, however tightly we knot ourselves, it would be extremely difficult, because there's, you know, yeah, I don't know. I would say here this is definitely the point at which to draw the line with this acceptance test, if you know what I mean.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so I'll just I'll upload. I can't remember the name. Upload what I've got, then you can.
Yeah. So open a work in progress pull request, and then I can check it out locally and replicate the issue that you have, and potentially, you know, either solve it or commiserate and say, well, let's just forget that test or what have you. Do what we need to do. And I think that you know, rather than keep. So one of the other things that we particularly want to avoid is having long-running pull requests. So you could say, oh, right, and we also want to do that G+ upgrade, or move G+ to the, you know, switch gems. But I would say, let's get those new SAD path tests merged in. You know, we can draw a line there. We can have a kit that's like, okay, we reckon probably we want to swap the gem over, and then that can be done, you know, based on the latest developed branch, and could be a separate thing that you could work on if you wanted, Bill, or not, entirely according to you. It could be picked up by somebody else.
Okay, well, that sounds like a plan.
Plan. Good stuff, and good chat. Okay. Yes. Well, I think that's our meeting for this week. I guess that my final question would be, well, it seems by virtue of your presence that that Wednesdays are not a bad time for this meeting to be. I'm trying to onboard other people. We moved to Wednesday partly to hopefully allow, is it Gail and possibly also Ose to attend. Gail attended one time. I haven't heard from either of those. There's another person, Aaron, who has actually, differently from I think Ose and Gail had, although Ose and Gail and Aaron all got set up with the project and got all the tests running locally, and seemed to do so without too much trouble. Aaron is now the first person who's actually submitted a pull request, and I'm trying to find out from him if he's available, if Mondays would be a better day. For any of you, would Monday be a terrible day to move this meeting to?
I'm fine with that.
I think it would be okay. It's the Elixir mob moved to Monday too, I think.
It did.
Okay, but not at the same time.
No, it's earlier in the day. This meeting would be later if it continues. Anyway,
this time.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, so I certainly won't move it in any rush. I'm just, trying to onboard as many folks as possible. Well, great to see you all. I guess I'm going to just kind of go and continue working on my, upgrades to the model and try and get my pull request cleared up. And just reach out on Slack at any time if you need help. Otherwise, there's the scrums, at the usual times each day, and help you out if you get stuck.
All right. Thanks very much, everyone.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, Bye.